Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for retreat and to the color. Please be seated. General Colin Powell was appointed the 12th Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff by President George Bush and assumed the role on October 3, 1989. The 4 years that followed marked one of the most historic chairmanships in the 50 years since the position was created, and one of the most dramatic periods in modern American history. In the months following General Powell's appointment, the Berlin Wall fell, freedom poured through Eastern Europe, and the communist empire of the Soviet Union was swept away. The threat of World War III and nuclear holocaust, with which 3 generations of Americans had lived and worked, was gone, vanished in a wave of freedom and democracy that reached from Budapest to Beijing. With its armed forces. At the same time our nation was fighting wars and responding to crises, General Powell and his colleagues on the Joint Chiefs of Staff were wrestling daily with the most dramatic restructuring of the nation's armed forces since World War II. Their goal was to preserve America's superb fighting forces while returning a well-deserved peace dividend to the nation's taxpayers. The task was challenging, complex, its context constantly changing as the post-Cold World War continued to evolve. Nevertheless, a new national military strategy was devised. A new force structure was created and the downsizing was begun. Proof of the outstanding results of this historic effort stands before us today, the magnificent men and women of today's armed forces. Men and women such as these have been busy throughout the world. In the aftermath of the Gulf War, they fed thousands of Kurds in the hills of northern Iraq. In Bangladesh, they were sea angels when typhoons ravaged the land. In Hawaii and in southern Florida, they brought food, water, security, and shelter to American citizens when hurricanes devastated their states. They provided food and medicine to the former Soviet Union. They flew relief missions into Sarajevo and are still doing so today. They also patrol the streets and villages of Somalia, helping to bring humanitarian aid to that war-torn nation. And of course, they man the watchtowers of freedom from Germany to Japan, and from Panama to the Persian Gulf. General Powell's service to the nation has spanned more than 35 years, coming to a historic conclusion in these last 4 years as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. All the members of the military family take this opportunity to salute General Powell for his devotion to duty, his caring leadership, and his pride in the armed forces of America. We are proud of you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the advancement of the colors and remain standing for the playing of the United States National Anthem. Please be seated. The Presidential Medal of Freedom with distinction is awarded to Colin L. Powell. 35 years of dedicated and selfless service to America marked the career of Colin Powell. He vigilantly guarded our nation's interest in a time of awesome change as the walls of totalitarianism began to crumble and a new nations grappled with the challenge of democracy. His foresight and vision have helped transform our armed forces into the unified fighting force necessary to meet the challenges of a new century. In the midst of his heavy responsibilities, he found time to encourage America's young people to devote their lives to public service. The United States honors this soldier statesman, whose accomplishments have earned the respect and admiration of a grateful nation. Ladies and gentlemen, General Powell has also been awarded the Department of Defense Distinguished Service Medal and the Distinguished Service Award of each branch of the Armed Services. The Department of the Army Decoration for Distinguished Civilian Service is awarded to Mrs. Alma Powell. Mrs. Powell distinguished herself through her 31 years of selfless service and support of numerous public service activities, which have contributed significantly to the welfare of military personnel and their families, thereby greatly enhancing the readiness of the United States Armed Forces. She has been an effective and vocal advocate for policies and programs which have directly benefited the health, welfare, and morale of military families. For over 3 decades, she has given freely of her time and talent to such organizations as the American Red Cross and the Armed Forces Hostess Association, and as a current member of the Ronald McDonald House Board and the National Military Family Board of Advisors. Her spirit of volunteerism has extended to and contributed to the well-being of local and world communities. In addition, she is a much sought-after speaker who has devoted time as a speaker to groups in and around the capital area. Mrs. Powell's caring and unselfish service reflects great credit upon herself and the United States Army. On the occasion of the retirement of her husband from active status with the United States Army, Alma Powell is awarded the Department of the Army Certificate of Appreciation for her own unselfish, faithful, and devoted service. Her unfailing support and understanding helped to make possible her husband's long-lasting contribution to the nation. Signed, General Gordon R. Sullivan, Chief of Staff of the Army. General Powell is now presenting a bouquet of flowers to his lady. At the same time, daughters Linda, Marie, and daughter-in-law Jane are also receiving flowers on behalf of General Powell. Ladies and gentlemen, Secretary Aspin.
Mr. President, members of Congress, members and friends of the Powell family, and other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here today to honor and to say farewell to Colin Powell. Today, General Powell, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, planner of the great American military victory in Operation Desert Storm, former National Security Advisor to the President, will retire from the United States Army. There are so many things to be said about Colin Powell. He is the youngest chairman of the Joint Chiefs. He is the first African American on the Joint Chiefs. He is the first ROTC graduate to be chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And he's the first chairman of the Joint Chiefs to appear as a full-sized cardboard cutout on the sidewalks of Washington for tourists to have their picture taken with him. But I believe above all that Colin Powell will be remembered for permanently changing how we view the office of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. In 1986, Congress passed something called the Goldwater-Nichols Act. It strengthened the hand of the warfighting commanders. It gave the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff new and bigger responsibilities. It made the chairman the principal military advisor to the civilian leadership, and it gave the chairman a joint staff commensurate with his new responsibilities. 3 years later, the law came fully into effect, and Colin was appointed the chairman. What happened was that a combination of a change in the law and the appearance on the scene of an extraordinary individual, Colin Powell, have changed forever the way we will look at and judge the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Colin came into office with a breadth of national security experience, a depth of judgment, and a reservoir of talent that I believe are unprecedented in the aggregate. He put his enormous talents to work with the new tools offered by Goldwater-Nichols. The combination of talent and opportunity elevated the chairmanship to an entirely new plane. The job of the chairman will never be the same. And what a job he has done. Military leader, statesman, wise advisor. And even beyond these roles, Colin has worked with great success to strengthen the bond between the American people and their armed forces. It is a bond that we all share. President Clinton has spoken to it. He has noted our armed forces are, as he put it, the shining bottle of our American values of dedication, responsibility, and a willingness to sacrifice for the common good. He has said that there is no greater honor in office than being the commander-in-chief of the finest armed forces the country has ever known and the finest armed forces the world has ever seen. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and a privilege for me to introduce our Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States. To get this out of your way.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Secretary Aspin, President and Mrs. Bush, General and Mrs. Powell, distinguished members of Congress, distinguished leaders of the United States military forces, my fellow Americans. Today, a grateful nation observes the end of a distinguished career and celebrates 35 years of service and victory. A victory for the United States military that gave young Colin Powell a chance to learn and to grow and to lead. A victory for the military and political leaders who continue to elevate him based on their complete confidence and sheer respect. A victory for a nation well served, and in a larger sense, a victory for the American dream. For the principle that in our nation, people can rise as far as their talent, their capacities, their dreams, and their discipline will carry them. A long time ago, Thomas Jefferson wrote, "The Creator has not thought proper to mark those in the forehead who are of stuff to make good generals. The Creator has not thought proper to mark them by the color of their skin or the station of their birth or the place they were born." Thank God for the United States that that is so. From my first meeting with Colin Powell, before I became president, I knew that one thing I would never have to worry about was having a strong and wise, a forthright and honest chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. His knowledge and judgment were a source of constant support. The fact that he enjoyed the respect of all of his troops, from the people first entering the service to his colleagues on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. His remarkable balance of prudence and courage and his unfailing sense of humor have been there through the difficult times of now 2 presidencies. And he clearly has the warrior spirit and the judgment to know when it should be applied in the nation's behalf. General Powell has been a rock of stability in our nation's military during a time of profound change. He has understood more clearly than virtually any other American the enormous resource that the young men and women in our uniform have been for our nation. He has been determined to give them the security that knowledge and skills and capacity bring, so that together they could take the changes that we have seen in the last few years. As the Secretary has noted, he was the first chairman to begin his tenure under the Goldwater-Nichols Act, and he has clearly set a standard by which all future chairs of the Joint Chiefs of Staff will be judged. During his term, the Cold War ended. We began to grapple with the consequences of that, mostly good and some bad. We have seen world-changing events force us to re-examine our missions, our force structures, and our commands. We have also seen a leader in Colin Powell who has not only responded to those great challenges, but one who could be trusted to feel in his heart the awesome responsibility for the lives and livelihood, for the present and future of every man and woman who wore the uniform of the United States of America. So today, General Powell, I speak for all of them who thank you for guiding and protecting their lives, even as you advance the cause of freedom around the world. I speak for their families who entrusted you with their sons and daughters. I speak for the young children who sent their mothers and fathers under your command in the Gulf, in Somalia, and elsewhere. For all them, I say you did well by them, as you did well by America. We take great pride in what you have done for your country. You have exemplified the military ethic in serving, in whatever mission, and in getting the job done. When we marched around the field today, I was glad to hear the long litany of Colin Powell's career, to remind us that in the spotlight and far away from the spotlight, as a young soldier and a not-so-young soldier, he was always first and foremost a good soldier, a role model for those in our military, and now a role model for all young Americans, someone we can appreciate for having done a job day in and day out, year in and year out, with ferocious dedication. In recognition of your legacy and service, of your courage and accomplishment, today, General Powell, I was honored to present you with the Presidential Medal of Freedom with distinction. I want to tell all those here in attendance that this was the second Medal of Freedom you have received, the first from President Bush in 1991, and today you became only the second American citizen in the history of the Republic to be the recipient of 2 Medals of Freedom. I want to thank you too, sir, for your advice and counsel and the work I had to do in selecting your successor. It was a job I think many people were afraid to even contemplate, for you are truly a hard act to follow. I know you share my opinion that we could not have done better than General Shalikashvili. I also want to say a special word of appreciation to Mrs. Powell for her inspiration and her support, her good-humored endurance of all the times when you could have been either with her, your daughters, or your automobiles, and had instead to be at the White House with me or someone else importuning on your time. I thank her and I thank your family for their sacrifices in your public service. When you proposed and married Alma Johnson and moved with her to Birmingham, Alabama, and before the year were already sent off as a young captain to serve in Vietnam. That year was 1962. In that same year, General Douglas MacArthur gave his famous farewell speech at West Point. He spoke the following words of praise to all those who serve in our military. I repeat them today because they apply especially well to you. MacArthur said, in reference to the American soldier, I regarded him as one of the world's noblest figures, not only as one of the finest military characters, but also as one of the most stainless. In closing, General Powell, I am reminded of the words of another young, valiant warrior, spoken when, like you, he was finishing one journey and beginning a second. John Bunyan wrote in Pilgrim's Progress of the warrior valiant at the end of his life as he prepared to present himself to the Almighty, my sword I give to him that shall succeed me in my pilgrimage, and my courage and skill to him that can get them. My marks and scars I carry with me to be a witness for me to him who shall be my rewarder. General Powell, your reward is a grateful nation and a bright future. Your reward is a stronger nation, safer and better today for your sword, your courage, and your skill. From the bottom of my heart, on behalf of every man and woman, every boy and girl in this great country, I thank you and wish you Godspeed.
Ladies and gentlemen, General Powell.
President and Mrs. Clinton, Vice President and Mrs. Gore, President and Mrs. Bush, Vice President and Mrs. Quayle, Justices of the Supreme Court, Secretary Aspen and members of the Cabinet, Service Secretaries, members of the Diplomatic Corps, my fellow Chiefs of Defense who have traveled from afar to be here, my dear friend Field Marshal Vincent, the Chairman of the Military Committee of NATO, my fellow members of the JCS, and the Commanders-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United States who are here today, distinguished guests, members of my beloved family, friends old and new, but all treasured, men and women of the Armed Forces of the United States represented so magnificently by the Joint Forces Honor Guard before you. I express my sincere thanks to each and every one of you for being here to share my final day in uniform. The Army has officially advised me that for record purposes I have served 35 years, 3 months, 21 days, and as we say in the infantry, a wake-up. I loved every single day of it, and it's hard to leave. It is made easier by your presence. Mr. President, Secretary Aspen, I thank you for your very, very kind words and your presence here today, as well as the great honor you do to me, Mr. President, by awarding me the Medal of Freedom with distinction. I also thank you both and Vice President Gore for the support and the openness that you have shown to me and to my colleagues in the Joint Chiefs of Staff over the past 8 months. During those 8 months, we've dealt with some very, very difficult issues. But, Mr. President, as you once said to me, if the issues were easy, if the problems were so quick to receive a solution, they would have been solved earlier by somebody else. Mr. President, you and Secretary Aspen have pledged yourselves to keeping our armed forces strong and of the highest quality. I can't tell you how much that means to each and every one of us in uniform to know that we have that kind of support, that kind of dedication, that kind of commitment from our Commander-in-Chief. On behalf of all of the members of the Armed Forces of the United States, I thank you for that pledge. And I can pledge back to you on behalf of each and every one of these wonderful young men and women that they will never, never let you down when it becomes necessary for you to call on them. President Mrs. Bush and Vice President Mrs. Quayle, let me also say that it means a great deal to Alma and to me to have you here today. You have been our dear friends over the years, and you have been treasured friends and supporters of our armed forces. Your presence here today with President Clinton and Vice President Gore speaks volumes about the nature of our political system and its relationship to the military. And I thank you both very, very much for being with us. There are too many distinguished guests here to recognize them all, but let me welcome especially my dear friend Secretary of Defense Cheney and Secretary Weinberger, who had such an important influence on my life over the last 10 years. I also want to recognize my predecessors as chairman. Admiral Crowe is here, and General Jones, General Vesey, and Admiral Tom Moore. And also recognize all the former members of the JCS and former commanders of our unified and specified command. As the President and Secretary have noted, much has happened over the past 4 years. I need not catalog for this audience the events attendant to the demise of the Cold War and the beginning of a new era in world history. We have seen war and we have seen peace. We have seen suffering and we have seen the promise of democracy. We have seen hope mixed with danger and uncertainty. We have seen the path open to a better world. Under you, Mr. President, America will lead the way to that better world. The aspiring nations of the world trust the United States. They need the United States. They need our political leadership. They need our economic strength. They need our value system as a model to learn from. They need our military strength, and they need our military commitment to help keep order and to help prevent aggression. America's armed forces will have a busy future, busier than in the predictable garrison days of the Cold War. As we sit here on this gorgeous fall afternoon at this historic post, elsewhere, American aviators are patrolling over the Persian Gulf. American infantrymen are in danger in Mogadishu, dealing with a difficult challenge, kind of challenge that is perhaps very, very typical of what we will be seeing more of in the future. Americans are flying desperately needed supplies into Bosnia. Other GIs are preparing for the possibility, the hopeful possibility of implementing a peace agreement in Bosnia. Our Navy patrols the Adriatic Sea and the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. Our Marines provide a reassuring presence in troubled regions of the world. The Army stands watch in Korea and Europe. Our Coast Guard goes after the drug enemy infiltrating our country. And at the heart of each of these services is the young American boy or girl, perhaps only 19 years old, a volunteer, well-trained, proud, selflessly serving a nation wherever that nation and whenever that nation calls upon it to go and to serve. They carry on a tradition of over 200 years of service and sacrifice. They go into harm's way to protect us and to provide for the common defense. They are the best and the very brightest of America's youth. And the greatest of all honors I have had was the honor of being one of them and of being their senior representative over the past 4 years. They have succeeded in every mission, and by their performance have bonded once again with the American people in a way we have not seen for decades. I thank each and every one of them for their service to country. For me, today is a day of memories and a day of thanks. And for the last several days, memories have been flooding in, and I've been having difficulty sorting them all out. Some are very, very vivid. Some are vague. They aren't entirely coherent to me, except perhaps to the deepest recesses of my mind's eye. The memories come to me in so many different ways. I remember vividly the day that my father, many, many years ago, for the first time, put me on a bus in New York City and saw me off to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, my first military experience. I remember fondly my ROTC days at CCNY. I remember cold nights in Korea and Germany with a sergeant coming along to offer me a hot cup of coffee. I remember miserably hot and terrifying days in Vietnam. I remember the warmth and pleasance of family reunions between assignments or coming home from overseas. I remember meeting Alma for the first time. I remember the memory of the births of each of our 3 wonderful, perfect children and the birth of a treasured grandson. I remember the thrill of moving from post to post, the excitement of working in the White House during historic times, the exhilaration of Operation Desert Storm. The faces of old friends and former commanders and fellow soldiers and family members have been marching by in a steady cadence for the last several days. I especially see the faces of comrades in arms who gave their lives in service to this country. I see the faces of those who trained me, those who disciplined me, those who inspired me, those who served with me, those who cared for me and loved me over these past 35 years. Many of you are here today, and I can't possibly thank you all. You know who you are, and I need not name all of the hundreds present. These events and people have given me a great life and have given me a great career. I have never wanted to be anything but a soldier, and my dream has been fulfilled for almost 4 decades. I find myself on this beautiful afternoon a most fortunate man. And by my side for most of that time has been Alma. For over 31 years, I have distilled from our life together one lesson that I will pass on to any young person contemplating marriage. Marry high. Marry high. And with Alma, I hit the heights. She raised 3 wonderful children. Over those 31 years, we moved to 22 different houses, but she made sure that we never changed homes. She shared every dark moment. She has been my partner and my supporting pillar over all those years. She has been a perfect Army wife, inspiring others and representing the nation so well around the world. Without her love and caring, I cannot imagine what my life would have been like. So Alma, darling, on this your day too, I thank you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing this journey. I will never be able to fully express my gratitude. So let me just say, thank you, darling. For the 3 Powell kids, and for the last 5 years joined by a wonderful daughter-in-law, let me just say that you have brought me incredible joy and pride, and I thank you so much. You are all hereby relieved of further duty as the General's kids. You no longer need to call me sir. You no longer need to stand at attention when I speak to you. You no longer need to refer to me behind my back as the great Santini. I also promise to be a bigger patsy for you in the future than I've been in the past. You are treasures. I also must say thank you to my remarkable extended family who have come from around the country to be here today, from Birmingham, from New York, from California, from Canada, from all over. My sister Marilyn is here and is now the matriarch, and she represents all of those first and second generations present who descend from an incredible group of Jamaicans who came to this country in the 1920s, seeing and seeking opportunities that existed only here. As one news article once put it, it was a darn good thing for Colin Powell that the boats that Luther and Ariel Powell got on in Kingston ended up in America and not somewhere else. I wish all of you here had known Luther and Ariel Powell, two remarkable people who are still with me and every member of my family every day. They are here today on this field as surely as I am. And I love them very much, and I thank them very much. I thank my office family, Nancy and Cammie and Grog and Otis and all the others who have been indispensable over the last several years. I especially must thank Admiral Dave Jeremiah, my vice chairman, for his outstanding friendship and support. I thank my JCS colleagues. We have been a remarkable team of 6 officers who have worked as brothers in arms to do our very, very best for the nation, and I'm proud of each and every one of them and the leadership that they have provided to the services and to the support that they have given to me. I thank the brilliant Joint Staff, and I thank all of my friends who are here today from Kelly Street, from my White House fellow days, from CCNY, from Germany. I thank a couple of special friends who know who they are, who call me every day to make sure that I'm all right. Also share with the President in congratulating General John Shalikashvili. He will be a brilliant chairman. He will be absolutely splendid in the job. He and Joni are a great military team. For a moment, with your permission, I wish to stop being the ecumenical chairman. And just for a moment, I want to return to my beloved Army. The Army has been my home. The Army has been my life. The Army has been my profession. The Army has been my love for all these many years. The Army has invested in me. It has taken chances on me. It has cared for me. When my career over the years took rather bizarre political turns that should have been fatal, great Army leaders such as General John Wickham and General Carl Vono always let me know that I could come home, that I had a place to go to in the Army. I am where I am today because the Army takes care of its own. I was allowed to rise based on performance. The Army took in a young black kid from ROTC in the South Bronx and brought him to this point. The Army allowed me to climb on the shoulders of the Buffalo Soldiers and other African Americans who had blazed the trail for 300 years of American history. And I hope the day will come soon when all parts of our society do for young minorities what the Army and the other armed services have been doing for young men and women of all color over the years. And finally, I want to thank the American people and the nation for the privilege of serving. I love this country with all my heart, with all my soul. It is a love without limit. I have a bottomless faith in the goodness of this land and in the goodness of its people. I am proud to be an American. I am so proud to have been an American soldier. And so on this, my last hour in uniform, my heart is filled with gratitude, with love, and with thanks for the blessings of family and the blessing of friends. And above all, the blessing, the unique blessing of being a citizen of this nation, which God has blessed, and which we are all very, very proud to call America. Thank you all for being here today. Goodbye, and God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, General Sullivan.
Headquarters, Department of the Army, Washington, D.C., 30 September 1993. The following General Officer of the United States Army is hereby retired: General Colin L. Powell. The United States Army and its soldiers are honored by General Powell's distinguished service. Honor! Guard! Attention! Honor guard! Pass! In review! Right! Hey! Right! Shoulder! Arms!
The final musical salute to General Powell is Eye of the Storm, the General Powell March, written by Sergeant First Class James Jose, musical arranger with the United States Army Band. Ladies and gentlemen, in just a few moments, there will be a flyover conducted to your front right above the flagpole by aircraft representing each branch of the armed forces. Representing the Army, 3 AH-64 helicopters from 3rd of the 229th Attack Regiment, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. 1 OH-58D helicopter from 4th of the 14th Attack Regiment, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Representing the Coast Guard, 4 H-60 helicopters from Elizabeth City, North Carolina, Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and Traverse City, Michigan. Representing the Air Force, 4 F-16s from 347th Fighter Wing, Moody Air Force Base, Georgia. Representing the Navy, 4 F-14s from Squadrons 142 and 143, Oceana Naval Air Station, Virginia. And representing the Marines, 4 F-18s from the 49th Marine Air Group, Detachment A, Andrews Air Force Base. Accompanying the flyover, the United States Army Band will sound and perform the official songs of the branches of the United States Armed Forces. that you please remain seated until the departure of the distinguished guest has been completed and the reviewing party has moved to the reception area. Please wait for the ushers to assist you, as you will be escorted to the reception area.